So this is, vlog for chapter 8 and 9 in The Shallows. So the chapter begins with a man with the last name Taylor walking into a Midvale steel plant in Philadelphia. He uses his stopwatch, and his goal was to improve the efficiency of the steel plant. He did this by pretty much breaking down every single job into very small steps. That way he can time each small step and seeing where they can save time in each step. Pretty much he used an algorithm to simplify what was going wrong, what was taking time. Whether it was a false step or workers were slacking off and talking. He made it so that that steel plant was the most efficient spot or most efficient way to do something. So the workers did not like this. It kind of made them feel like they were nothing. They were just moving like ants. And in the chapter, it kind of showed and said like they felt like dirt. Later on, the system was used in almost every single factory around the world due to it was just becoming so relevant that this factory was doing something so well, why don't we adopt it in ours? And furthermore, everyone used it. Let's see. And the way he did it, he used something that's called now motion studies. And pretty much does a study and analyzes it into an algorithm that makes it the fastest production rate for that company. And this was used on all acts of manual labor. To this day, we still use this system. Nowadays, though, we have more accurate timing and computer systems that can run algorithms in the snap of a fingers rather than one man sitting down at a desk for 3 days and trying to chart out steps and procedures. Let's see. Later on, it goes into telling that the internet is actually a machine in that it can manipulate and create any algorithm as we use today. It said something interesting. It compared Silicon Valley to a church and a temple, and pretty much it practices its own religion based on its code and algorithms on how it wants to think. Therefore, how we have to think. Sorry, I'm at work. Skips down to how they invest. And it shows that they have invested billions along the years in data packs all around the world, ensuring that it can deliver a search result within milliseconds. And if you ever go into Google something that actually shows you how long it took to take what you inputted into what it gave you. And it'll show you the milliseconds it took and how many results it did find, while at the same time organizing them to the relevance of that search, which I think that's very cool. It also says that without the algorithms knowledge, knowledge would be lost in the internet because there's millions upon millions search results for one simple thing. But those algorithms are used as a compass and a navigational tool to point us in the right direction. Altogether, the algorithms have made it efficient to look up books, such as how Google has scanned many books into the internet, look up something from a certain quote to a certain page for a certain author. This, though, happened to cause a lot of anger in authors because they weren't just scanning in books that were past their copyright date. They were doing books that were still under it. This led to a lawsuit, and within that lawsuit, it took 3 years to settle, and in that lawsuit, they scanned in 7 million books, but 6 million of those were still under copyright. The settlement agreed to $125 million to the copyright authors, along with other stipulations that would grant those copyright authors more money. The settlement, though, also caused a fear of that in the fine print, Google would have a monopoly over the market. And then we go into chapter 14. It was very short and sweet. There wasn't a lot of stuff to take out of it, besides the fact that it mentioned Socrates and how him writing down his knowledge helped his community because other people could see his knowledge, read his knowledge, and memorize it. That way, it turned knowledge not into something knowing, but almost into a personality. And you can see, like, nowadays, personality, people that lack knowledge have a personality that you kind of can't connect if you have the knowledge of something. It almost seems like ignorance nowadays. And also goes into how in classes they started using a memorization tool. And why they did that is because it wasn't just about the memorization, the reading. It was said that it engages your whole mind in having to remember something and constantly think of it. Also said that students began to have notebooks, which back then they were also called commonplaces. The notebook was used to jot down any knowledge, any quotes, anything that they thought was interesting, so that whenever they wanted to, they could go back, reread it, and memorize it. In the 1900s, though, memorization began to be shut out of many school systems because it was told that it inhibited the use of imagination, which is true because when you're trying to focus on something and memorize something, you're not really looking into what words mean. How you can memorize the spelling of a word and the definition of the word, but you don't know how it's used. You don't know how it can be placed into different contexts, which is something that memorization lacks. You can memorize a quote by the words, but you can't memorize a quote by what it means in that situation and what situation it was in. Like, if you go back to the Civil War, there was a captain, I believe it was, that said, "Don't shoot until you see the white in their eyes." You can memorize that quote, but you can't memorize the fact that it was said because those soldiers were running out of ammo so quickly and the British had so many more soldiers, and that they didn't want to shoot until they were